Yeah, we're not doctors or giving any medical advice. This show is intended for educational purposes only, and you should talk to your doctor about any medical issues. Now, let's get at it.
Welcome to Chat the Fat, where nutrition authors Nissa Graun and TC Hale are going to break down common low-carb mistakes. Let's chat all things low-carb, keto, digestion, and more so you can maximize your results.
Hello, good people, and welcome back to Kick It No, Chat the Fat. We're welcoming back to Chat the Fat. I get confused. I do too many things. Okay, so this is Chat the Fat. This is episode 47 and 48, and I'm here with Nissa Graun, which helps me to understand that this is the show Chat the Fat and not Kick It Naturally.
Yes, we are recording Chat the Fat today.
Okay, let's do it. But I think we'll do that the whole show. The whole show we'll do Chat the Fat.
Sounds good. Although those also listening to Kick It Naturally might like this episode since we are going to talk to stuff that applies to them as well.
Oh, you know what? This is a case study. I really like to air these on Kick It Naturally, so we'll probably do it on that too. So maybe I just knew that in my head.
All right, now you have to go for both.
Right. So this is, I really like these shows because we dig into like physiology and sciencey things.
We do. All right, so in case you haven't figured it out, today we have a special case study for a Keto Decoded member. So from time to time, we run a special where you can register for our Keto Decoded membership and receive a big discount when you opt for an entire year of our amazing support. As an incredible bonus with this deal, Tony and I do a case study all about how you can cheat to see quicker progress, just like on this podcast. When we review your case study, you receive the same insights that Tony's personal clients receive, but you get it for free when you register as a Goal Crusher, which is our annual pay option. Getting this insight for free with your annual membership is an amazing deal since Tony charges way more for his new clients than our Goal Crusher members pay, so it's definitely worth snatching up if it's available. To find out when you can get in on this amazing deal, go to kickitnaturally.com/annual pay. So today we are reviewing Laura's case to help her figure out why she's been dealing with infertility issues and also some connective tissue disorders. Laura isn't her real name, but she wanted to remain anonymous, so we'll just call her Laura.
Yeah, her real name is Harriet, so we're going to leave that out because she wants to be anonymous, so we'll just call her Laura.
Yeah, so we're not talking about Harriet, we're only talking about Laura today.
Right.
And we are going to look at her chemistry and go over a bunch of questions that Tony asked her in order to gain more insights into how her body might be operating. Now, you need to keep in mind when you listen to this episode that Tony and I are not doctors and we are not giving Laura or any other listeners any medical advice. We're sharing insights about issues that Laura is dealing with and how her chemistry might line up with those issues, along with the steps that might improve these issues for someone dealing with similar imbalances. When we do a case study like this, we make an imbalance guide so you can follow along with the numbers and learn where imbalances are jumping out. This will help you better understand how to read your own imbalance guide. So if you want to check out Laura's imbalance guide, just go to the show notes page at chatthefat.com/episode 47, and let's move over to TC because he's holding up the imbalance guide.
Yeah, so I got it here, and you can download it to kind of follow along. We're going to kind of talk a little bit about some of our numbers and look at some specific imbalances, so this can be helpful when you do this. And we show people how to fill these out in our almost free 4-week digestion course. It's 50 cents to sign up for that. And it kind of teaches you how to do the self-test and how to fill out this imbalance guide to figure out your, what imbalances may be going on. And you can find that at kickitnaturally.com/keto digest.
And the course teaches you how to cheat on your diet because if you fix some of these things up, your progress will go way faster than if you just let them hang out.
Right. Right. So we like cheating. We belong to the work smart camp, and we laugh and we point at the work hard camp.
Only if you're cheating for good and not evil.
Well, what's the difference, really?
Evil laugh. I should have him here on standby to do his evil laugh.
Oh, good.
So first, let's look at the stats that we have for Laura. She is 5'4" and weighs 139 pounds. She has a fasting glucose of 89 with a saliva pH of 6.75, a urine pH of 6.25, blood pressure of 129/80, pulse of 56, and a breath rate of 11.
So a lot of these numbers are actually pretty good, but when we look at them on the imbalance guide and we look at some of the stuff that we're dealing with, we're going to see that by adjusting some of these things, she could improve some of the stuff that she's dealing with. And we're also going to see why some of her numbers are likely a liar.
Okay. And
So
also,
we're cheaters. She's a liar.
I might sound uneducated in a few minutes because there's some big words coming up that I might not know how to pronounce.
Oh, that's great. I like that. Yeah, I just make them up too.
Liars and uneducated. All right. So some of the issues that she wants to work on are premature ovarian insufficiency, premature ovarian failure, which are also abbreviated as POI or POF, and this is unexplained at age 36. She has mixed connective tissue disorder, which is autoimmune, and some of her digestive issues are constipation and bloating. She has a thyroid nodule, small one, on the right lobe of the thyroid, and an elevated thyroglobulin,
That was
and
pretty good.
all right, I said it slow, and fluctuating thyroid hormone panel. She also has stress and anxiety.
All right, so let's look at these other important factors before we get too much into these things.
Okay, so some of the other factors include she has low cholesterol with a total cholesterol of 152, insomnia, cravings, constipation, bloating, varied stool color, irregular periods, infertility issues, and she let us know that she drinks 2 to 3 alcoholic drinks each day. Does that deal with these issues or?
Well, no, but I think that it's important for some of the stuff that we're going to look at. And we won't dig too much into her stress and personal issues that she's been dealing with, but it was a lot. And I think that I might have 6 or 7 alcoholic drinks a day if I was dealing with a lot of the stuff that she was dealing with. So I think it's important to understand kind of some of the stuff that's going on. And I wanted to put her low cholesterol number up there because a lot of people will get a low number like that and they'll be like, I win, look at that, I'm awesome. But it can actually cause a lot of problems when cholesterol is that low. And you usually only see it that low if someone's on cholesterol lowering medications or they're a vegan and they're not eating any kind of animal products. But it can also happen if they're not digesting protein very well and they can't access all those nutrients in there. And also if the liver is just getting beaten, like if the liver can't do its job. A lot of cholesterol medications work by just limiting the liver's ability to function and do its job because we know that the job of the liver is to make cholesterol, and it makes cholesterol to deal with inflammation, but it also uses cholesterol for a lot of other functions like, build your brain and allow your brain to function. So when someone's cholesterol levels are really low, it can actually be problematic and be causing issues. So I like to see somebody actually bring their cholesterol up. And so we're looking at this low cholesterol number because it's a marker for poor bile flow, or maybe just years of medications and other things that might be beating on the liver and making it not function as well. But when we look at her varied stool color, that's a pretty good slam dunk for bile not flowing well. So when the bile is flowing correctly, our stool will be dark. And if it's not, then all the filth that the liver is putting into the bile to get out of the body, it's like, here's the trash, bile, you take the trash out. And if bile isn't flowing correctly, the trash doesn't get taken out. So all that filth and junk and toxins and synthetic stuff from medications and all that kind of stuff gets refiltered into the body. And then the liver has to filter it out all over again. It's like, hey, I already did this. And the liver just starts to get overwhelmed and it can't do the other jobs that it needs to do, like making proper levels of cholesterol. So it makes sense why we might see her number low like that. So that could end up being an important piece of information as we look at some of her things.
So even though the mainstream says lower cholesterol is better, you're saying that lower cholesterol is not always better?
Right. So it's not always better. And there's even a lot of information and science coming out now that's showing that higher cholesterol can actually be beneficial. And um, that's a whole other topic that we could really get into a lot. Maybe we'll do that some other show. But 220 was the perfect cholesterol for decades. That's what we viewed as perfect. But recently, the medical community said, well, people have 220, but they're still getting heart attacks. So that must be too high. And the reality is that uh, there is no correlation between the cholesterol number and heart attacks. People, when they lower the cholesterol number, they have heart attacks anyways. When the cholesterol number goes really high, people don't have heart attacks. So they're starting to see now that there really is no correlation there at all. It's a lot of other factors that we have to look at. But they said, well, we need to lower that. So we're going to lower the number to 200 now. And what people don't realize is that, half of the population falls between 200 and 220. It's like a huge percentage of the population. So when they lowered that to 200, guess what? Overnight, there's a 50% increase in pharmaceutical sales. So that's a pretty good idea for them to lower that number if you really think about it.
All
Just
right,
saying.
very tricky. All right, so getting back to Laura, not Harriet, Laura, she had a few questions from her questionnaire that we wanted to review. So you asked Laura, do you take any medications or hormones? And if so, list them and share the purpose. So she let you know that she takes low-dose naltrexone, which is abbreviated as LDN, and she takes 6.5 milligrams once per day. And she let you know that she stopped taking bioidentical hormone cream compounded in Versabase in July 2019.
Yeah, and so we do see that she's on a medication, so it makes sense that her liver would at least be a little bit overwhelmed because that's how medications work. The liver's job is to remove toxins. So they found long ago that when they put medications in the body, the liver just removed it, and then the drug didn't work. It didn't help the person. So they had to up the dosages enough to overwhelm the liver enough to allow some of the medication to stay in the system and do what it's intended to do. So anytime someone's on a medication, the liver is going to be being a little bit overwhelmed in order for that medication to work. And we didn't tell her to stop using this bioidentical hormone cream, but we're certainly happy that she did. Because when you use one of these rub-in hormone creams that have the ability to change some symptoms and create some reactions, but the problem is that when you rub it in, some of that cream gets stored in the skin as well as fat cells that are within that skin and below the skin. And every time you rub it in, a little bit of it goes in the system and a little bit of it will get stored in these fat cells and other cells. And what happens is over the next 6 months, that medication starts to leave the cells that it's stored in and go into the system. So now, not only are you getting the dose that you're rubbing in that day, you're also getting doses that are released from these storage cells constantly. So 6 months later, you might be getting 3, 4, 5 times the dose you were when you were first starting to do that. And the dose can continue for quite a long time as, especially if a person starts losing a lot of weight. We hear all the time from people like losing a lot of weight, they'll feel side effects and symptoms from medications that they haven't taken in years. And it's because it had been stored in fat cells. So that's a little crazy, right?
That's not that crazy. That's actually been happening to me this past year. So,
right. So people think, oh, am I crazy? I'm just thinking this. No, you're getting a dose of that medication. Because that's why the body says, oh, this is a toxin. I'm going to shove this in this fat cell for safekeeping, because the fat cell can make it inert. It can make it to where it won't cause trouble in the bloodstream. So the body's saying, I'm a little overwhelmed with junk in the bloodstream right now, so I'm going to shove this in a fat cell for safekeeping. And then later, when I feel like the coast is clear, I might pull it out. But if the coast isn't clear for years, it's staying in the fat cells until the person starts aggressively taking steps to lose weight. and allow the body to flush the junk in those fat cells. And then, hey, I just took a dose of heroin or what, I don't know. Yeah, that's probably not a medication that you prescribe, but something that you
Sure.
haven't had in a long time, now you're having it.
Yeah, I actually recently read that once you get down to the visceral fat, I think it is, like the fat closest to your body, that's when the toxins really start coming out.
Right. Which that makes sense because that's probably the ones that would hold on to the left. Okay, let's look at her next note.
Okay, so you asked Laura if she was currently eating keto and what were her goals with keto, but she said, no, I am not eating keto. I still have major issues with digestion, so I think keto would be too difficult for digestion. But I currently am trying to stick with the paleo diet, which I did for about 2 years consistently. But I did fall off the wagon and I'm having a hard time being consistent because I like white carbs.
And before I forget, just make sure that, by saying that that medication that she was on is likely overwhelming the liver, that doesn't mean we're saying for her to stop taking that medication. That's definitely not something that we would say. And I agree with her that keto is not right for what she's dealing with now and the goals that she has. And we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Okay. What about the fact that she likes white carbs? That's important.
Yeah, and when we look at the other important factors, she had cravings listed in there. So that's something that we're going to have to talk about. We can kind of talk about that right now
Okay.
because we look up at her blood pressure, and her blood pressure is 129/80, which is pretty much, if you look at the imbalance guide, you see that the top systolic number and the bottom number are in the green zones. So that should be good. She should be golden there. And when someone has good or even higher blood pressure, they're less likely to deal with cravings. The problem is if you look at the side effects of the low dose naltrexone that she's taking, and this is one of those meds that a lot of even doctors that are on our team and very natural and very nutrition based will use this medication for a variety of issues. Because at the low dose level, it has the ability to help a person just function a little bit better. But when you look at the side effects, it says it has the ability to raise blood pressure. And that's even why they even use this sometimes for depression and anxiety issues, because it has the ability to raise blood pressure. And some of those meds that have the ability to raise blood pressure, especially antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds, they do so by restricting the person's ability to pee out their salts. So now more minerals stay in the system, and signals can travel better, and they can function better, and they don't have as many cravings and all those things. So when we look at this, we see that she's on a medication that's going to often raise blood pressure. So we know that her blood pressure, her real blood pressure, is probably not that good at all. If she's on a medication that has the ability to raise it, we know that her natural blood pressure and her natural mineral content is probably lower than what the blood pressure is telling us. We also see that her fasting glucose is 89, which is leaning a little bit high. We look at the fact that she's drinking liquid sugars almost daily with the alcoholic drinks. And all those things tell us that her blood sugar is probably part of that blood pressure. So it's part of what's thickening up the blood and raising the blood pressure. And what we really want to raise the blood pressure is minerals. Because when there's enough mineral in the system, then the body doesn't freak out when blood sugar goes low, and it doesn't scream, give me Nilla wafers. This is why people have the cravings that go out of control, is because, mineral levels are really low like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so even though looking at it, her blood pressure looks fine, but because it's artificially inflated, that means she's still likely not getting the nutrients she needs to keep it high normal.
Yeah, it's not a true identity of who she is as far as her mineral levels. And when you look at some of the other issues that she's dealing with, there's a lot of other issues that scream low mineral levels. And, we never like to make assumptions off of just somebody's symptoms. But when you're looking at the numbers and you're looking at the fact that, okay, these medications and these sugars are likely raising that, then you can say, okay, the blood pressure is probably actually lower than it looks like. And then a lot of these symptoms and issues start to make a lot of sense.
Right. All right. So speaking of what she's eating, she gave you a sample day of eating. So let's go through that. She said for breakfast, she typically has egg white, paleo bacon, decaf tea, but on this particular day, she went out to brunch. So she had a veggie egg white omelet with light goat cheese, loaded
Wrong
roast
pipe. Sorry.
with some light cheese, bacon, green onion, light sour cream on the side. And she also had a cup of decaf English breakfast tea with dairy creamer, even though she usually uses coconut milk or coconut cream, almond milk, or macadamia nut creamer, and a little bit of honey. When you asked her about snacks, she said that it's very rare that she snacks. And for lunch, she said she was full from brunch, so she didn't eat lunch, but she usually eats dinner leftovers as her lunch. And then for dinner, she had Mediterranean grill beef kebab with very light I don't know what that is, basami rice, garlic hummus, and chutney. And she usually eats a paleo meal for dinner, so it's typically not filled with carbs, but she said that she has been craving carbs more, so she is adding them to her dinners more.
Okay. One thing I want to touch on is she talked about at the beginning how she was hoping to improve her mixed connective tissue disorder, which is considered an autoimmune issue. And autoimmune issues are usually not a problem of the body attacking itself the way the medical world views it. The medical world views it as like the body's just like, my immune system is crazy and it's just attacking everything. It's going to attack these cells for no stupid reason because my body got dumb all of a sudden. And we just don't view it that way. We have on Kick It Naturally, we have an episode on food sensitivities where we talk about, and I think we have another one on autoimmune issues. Just put those words in the search box and you'll find those episodes if you want to learn more about that. But in a lot of cases, the body is not attacking itself. It's attacking something that it's viewing as an invader. And a lot of times it's food. When we're not digesting correctly, the food doesn't get broken down into vitamins, minerals, amino acids, fats, things that the body can use. It just goes into the bloodstream still intact. It's still a peanut butter sandwich when it goes into the bloodstream. And the body's like, I don't know what that is. It can't use a peanut butter sandwich. So it views that as an invader, and it creates all these immune cells that attack it when it comes in there. So when you eat that food again, you get this immune reaction, which is an appropriate reaction because your body thinks it's an invader. And so one of the foods that can be very problematic are a lot of these xanthan and gum type things, ingredients that they add to a lot of almond milks and non-dairy creamers and things like that. So you really got to look at the ingredients. If you're using those things, make sure that they don't have any, carrageenan or xanthan gum or any kind of the gums. A lot of the gums cause problems, and I used to chew a lot of gum. I really liked it. But that can be important if you're dealing with some issue that is viewed as an autoimmune issue. You want to remove ingredients like that as a priority. Okay, so we're going to talk, let's talk more about that autoimmune issue right now too. And it's a problem with connective tissues. And this particular issue has been grouped together with rheumatoid arthritis too. And what we see in rheumatoid arthritis is we see the connective tissues kind of breaking down so that it ends up being like bone on bone, and it's really painful. There's other arthritic type issues where they're more about calcium being deposited in those joints, and then they become calcified and they don't move as well and they become painful. But with rheumatoid arthritis, it's viewed more as tissues breaking down. And with this connective tissue disorder, it seems to be viewed the same way. And with those issues, we view it more as those tissues being broken down and not being rebuilt correctly. Not that the body is like, I'm going to attack cartilage for no reason. Like the body is not as stupid as the medical world views it. But what does happen is either the body can go into a severe catabolic state where it's breaking down tissue all the time. And if the person never moves back into that anabolic rebuild state, then the tissues don't get rebuilt. So that can be one cause to this issue. But another cause is that the body is not getting the resources it needs because your digestion is not breaking down food correctly. You're not receiving any of these vitamins, minerals, amino acids that are in your food because you're not digesting them to the point the body can access those nutrients. So what the body does is it says, I'm not getting what I need. I'm going to get it anyways. I'm going to go shop at this 7-Eleven, and the 7-Eleven is you. So the body starts breaking down your own tissues to access these nutrients that it needs to function. And some of the tissues that it breaks down are connective tissues. And if it's always breaking down, if it finds this fuel source, oh, I'm just going to use this worked, then it continues to do that. And then it can create a lot of problems that the medical world views as, oh, the body's attacking itself. Well, it's not attacking itself. It's just trying to fuel all these functions all these processes that happen in the body. So since her resources appear to be low, and we know that she has a lot of digestive issues and doesn't seem to be breaking down proteins correctly, then this starts to make sense for her connective tissue issues where they seem to be disintegrating out of nowhere. How many people did I lose there?
I think that helps me understand it more. Because when you say connective tissue disorder, it sounds kind of scary, and I wouldn't really know what that means, but that explains it for me.
And to have that is scary because you see these things as people age. And as we age, our digestion doesn't work as well. We don't have the resources for it to function correctly. And these things start to happen. But when somebody's 36 and they're happening, it can really freak the person out. But if a person's been having digestive issues since they were 11, then it makes sense that their body in specific areas might be aging faster than somebody else might. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So she's taking the low dose naltrexone for that issue. And then she also talked about that she has infertility issues.
Right. And I think that their doctor was even trying to use that for the infertility issues as well. And like the list of things that people use low dose naltrexone for is very long. And I don't understand the mechanism of what it's doing where it may be helping some of these issues. But when we look at the fact that she has the issue in the first place, and we look at the physiology and the other symptoms and issues that she's dealing with, we see that, oh, well, it starts to make a little bit of sense.
Okay. And so she's on that medication. Then she's also taking some supplements. So you asked her which one she's taking and how long she's been taking them. The first one she listed is, it says immune tree colostrum. She takes 3 capsules twice daily in order to calm autoimmune issues. And she has been on and off of those for 1.5 years.
And I've used colostrum in the past. It can be a good, easy to access source of good nutrients. But it doesn't seem like it's helping her a lot. And the results that I've seen from colostrum have not been sensational. I'm fine with her taking it. It's just not something that I've seen amazing results from, like some of the stuff we'll talk about.
Okay, and then she's also taking Just Thrive probiotic. She takes 2 capsules per day, and this is to improve digestion. And she's also been taking that on and off for about 1.5 years.
And let's combine that with the next one.
And the next one, she's taking Pure TheraPro RX Saccharomyces, 10 billion, 2 capsules per day. And she's taking that to rebuild a healthy gut flora after antibiotic use. And she said she's been using that for 3 months.
And so one thing I like for people to understand is, because when you look on the internet, like, I want to improve my digestion, you're going to find probiotics and you're going to find fiber. And that's pretty much all you're going to find. But probiotics can be a nice bonus piece of the puzzle, but nobody's ever going to fix their digestion with probiotics. It's not going to correct low stomach acid. It's not going to improve bile flow. And those are the 2 main functions of digestion that have to be working in order to break that food apart. So doing these things is okay for her to do, but they're not going to fix digestion. Also, when I see someone, when someone needs to use probiotics, like maybe they did antibiotics or maybe they had diarrhea or some kind of issue where they need probiotics, I just like to see them do it for a few weeks at a time and do kind of cycles of it and not use probiotics indefinitely, because you can end up whatever strain you're using, making that the very dominant strain in your body, and anything not being balanced can create issues. So I just like to see people do it in phases. And if the gut is right, then the probiotics will thrive and they'll replenish and everything will be fine. It's not something that you really need to take consistently. You just need to get the gut right and have digestion working correctly so that the environment is correct. And then taking the probiotics can be more beneficial.
So you think her taking it for 3 months is too long of a cycle then?
I think that's about as much as I would want anybody to do it. I usually like to see 2-3 weeks and then stop. And then maybe after a couple months, you might do a week or two again.
Okay. And then she said she's also taking Gold Health Organic Maca, 1,500 milligrams. She takes 2 capsules twice daily, and she was taking this in order to balance hormones for on and off for the last 1.5 years.
Yeah, and one issue is, she has some thyroid issues, and maca contains some of the goitrogens, which can inhibit thyroid function. So anytime someone says, oh, I'm taking this to balance my hormones, I'm like, just stop it. I don't want you to do that. And I'm not telling her to stop it, but that's just what I say in my head as I say, just stop it. Because hormones, when they're in the wrong level, it's not the hormone's fault. It's what's happening is that there aren't enough resources for the body to function correctly. So the body says, oh, okay, well, I'm going to jack up these hormone levels because that can help me complete these functions and processes that I'm trying to do. So I'm going to use these hormones all jacked up to replace the lack of resources that I have. And the thing is that almost every hormone has a partner hormone. So when one goes high, one goes low. So when the body jacks up this hormone to try and get these functions to work, another hormone might go very low and then start creating other problems and symptoms. So instead of trying to manage the hormones, I like to see people increase their resources so that the body can function the way that it's supposed to function. And then it won't have to have these hormones going in crazy levels all over the place. The other thing is that maca is it's kind of like a carbohydrate, sort of. It's like a root or kind of thing, as from what I remember. But I remember that it has the ability to raise blood sugar and insulin the same way that a carbohydrate can. And, that's kind of how we use like medium carb foods with people, is when they don't have enough minerals, we're like, okay, we'll just have low amounts of carbs at each meal to kind of lift your blood pressure a little bit and help you function a little bit better. You can use those carbs when the minerals are low to kind of buffer the system. And I think that's one of the reasons why people like to use maca, is because it's almost kind of like raising their carbs a little bit to help them function a little bit better. But when we look at her imbalance guide and we see her pHs, we see that her saliva pH is 6.75 and her urine pH is 6.25. And both of those are kind of in green zones. But when we look at them, if you're watching on the video on YouTube right now, you'll see that they're very close together. The urine and the saliva pH are close together. And that's a marker for an anabolic imbalance. And we see that she's dealing with constipation, which we always see very commonly with the person will have an anabolic imbalance. And this imbalance will cause the body to send more water to the kidneys and less to the bowels, and then they'll get constipated and plugged up, and then the trash doesn't get taken out the back door, and then the liver gets overwhelmed. So all those things that she's already dealing with, we don't want her to magnify those. And maca seems to be a pro-anabolic supplement, so it's not something that I would take if I were her already dealing with anabolic issues. We also see that she's dealing with a lot of anxiety, and an anabolic imbalance has the ability to raise anxiety as well by, long story short, is it raises the lactic acid level in the body, and that has the ability to raise anxiety. So I would want to see her improve an anabolic imbalance instead of using supplements that have the ability to push her more anabolic.
Okay. And then she had other supplements she's taking. So she also mentioned the Nordic Naturals Ultimate Omega 1280 milligrams Omega 3, 2 capsules per day. And she was told that this helps with autoimmune and fertility issues. And this is another one she's been taking for 1.5 years.
Right. And I don't view this as helping an autoimmune issue at all. With autoimmune issues, we see inflammation a lot. And people, the medical world views omega-3s as anti-inflammatory because basically they have the ability to be anti-inflammatory. But the thing that most people don't understand is that they also have the ability to create more inflammation long term. They have the ability to make a person more insulin resistant and raise insulin levels and increase inflammation long term. So I don't like to see people use omega-3s long term. They're also very pro-catabolic, which can help improve an anabolic imbalance. So I might use them in the short term if someone is severely anabolic and really needs help. But I don't like to see them use omega-3s for the long term. And I know that I go against pretty much everybody out there when I say this, but I did not make this up. This is something that we learned from Ray Peat and Guy Shanker and some other guys that have figured out that they're just not as beneficial as people think that they are.
Yeah, pretty much any doctor I've ever seen, whether natural or mainstream, has touted omega-3s and everyone should take them.
Right. And you used to be really catabolic. And so that would have just made you much, much, much worse. And I learned, I thought I was supposed to take them too. And I was overly catabolic and I would take them and I would sleep like once a month, because I was so catabolic.
Well, they really push them for pregnant women and I gestational diabetes, so that probably isn't a good combo either.
Right. It's just not a good combo at all. They view the omega-3s as beneficial for brain health, for the baby. And I'm fine with somebody taking some for that reason, but it just appears that the baby can get what it needs from food sources.
Okay. So she's also taking a supplement studio whole food multivitamin plus, and she takes 3 capsules daily. When you asked her why, she said she didn't get enough vitamins or minerals from her diet, and she's tired of taking expensive prenatal vitamins for fertility issues, and she's been taking this one for about 6 months.
Right, and I'm fine with it. I've never seen a human being fix their problems with a multivitamin, but this is a whole food source of multivitamins, so I'm fine with it, and I even view it as it could be possible. But she's right that she's not getting the nutrients she needs from her food because she's not breaking her food down. So instead of taking a multivitamin that she actually may not even have the ability to break the vitamin down, I like to see somebody really fix digestion.
And she's taking Restorative Formulations ThyroCare, 2 capsules per day for her elevated thyroglobulin levels.
Good job.
Consistent TSH levels and small thyroid nodules on right lobe of thyroid.
Yeah, and I don't know this supplement, but when you look at it, it has things like iodine and kelp type things in it, which the thyroid needs iodine to function correctly. So that's one possible reason that a thyroid might not function correctly is a lack of iodine. The problem is it's usually not that the person is not getting enough iodine. It's usually that their pHs are really whacked, and iodine is a mineral that in order for it to be absorbed by the body, it has the smallest window of balanced pH-ness that is required. Like, some minerals are very easy to assimilate, and others, the pH really needs to be in a right range. And we see that her pHs are a little too close together. And so I might like to see her urine pH come down, her saliva pH come up a little bit, and that might make it easier for her to assimilate iodine. So she might be taking this for no reason if she can't really assimilate that, but if she can improve her pHs, then this supplement might be beneficial.
Okay. And then she's taking Great Lakes Collagen Hydrolysate, 2 to 4 tablespoons daily, because she was told it's good for autoimmunity and absorbing nutrients. And she's been taking it on and off for 1.5 years.
Yeah, and I don't view this as anything that's going to improve autoimmunity necessarily. Collagen has the ability to improve the immune system. So maybe people view it that way, but if the body is having an immune response to food sensitivities, then it doesn't make sense that that's going to help it. But we're big fans of this supplement, and I view people getting better results from this than they would from the colostrum type thing that she was taking before. So this is what I would want a person to use to improve connective tissue type things. So this is something that could be very beneficial to her, but if she's not fixing digestion and the body's still not getting all the things it needs, it's not going to really use this nutrient to rebuild that connective tissue because it's still in the process of breaking down all of those tissues every day to get more of the nutrients that it needs. So she would need to first get her body to have the ability to get the nutrients it needs from the food it's eating, and then this supplement could become very beneficial to her.
So what about the colostrum and the collagen to help improve gut health? Like, would that help repair the gut lining that would help autoimmunity, or is that not right?
Well, that could be very true. And that's something else that, again, if the body's not in a place where it is really in a repair mode, if it's still breaking down everything to look for nutrients, then that repair process doesn't move into place. But again, once the body has what it needs and it's going to start repairing tissues, then these particular nutrients can help the body repair any type of, leaky gut issues where the intestinal lining has been compromised and there's too many holes. It can start repairing those types of things. But that process, not only do you have to have digestion working correctly so that all of these undigested food particles are not creating more holes in that lining, but that process can take some time, and you really need to be patient with that. It's not going to happen in a couple of weeks.
Okay. So she has a few more supplements she's taking with big names. She is taking Enzymatica Digest Spectrum, 3 to 4 capsules per meal, and she's taking these to help improve digestive issues, although she said nothing seems to work very well. And she's been taking this particular brand for about 4 months. And she's also taking the Enzymatica Gluten Ease, 2 capsules only when having a meal with gluten or suspected gluten. And she said she's doing this because she wants to protect herself when she eats gluten, and so she only uses it occasionally.
Okay, so the Enzymatica is actually a decent company, and they make good enzymes. I'm fine with her using that. And the gluten ease, I'm not such a fan of, because not only does it make the person feel like, oh, I have like a superpower that allows me to eat gluten now. I'm just going to take this supplement and then I can have all the pizza I want. And it's misleading because first of all, this assumes that your gluten intolerance is caused by a lack of the enzymes used to break down that type of nutrient. And that's not always the reason that gluten can be causing problems. And there's even a lot of science out now that shows that gluten doesn't cause any problems. But when people eat gluten-containing foods, they get all these problems. So we're kind of viewing it as that it may not actually be the gluten. It may be all of these other cofactors that go along with gluten. And the reason I say that is because people have done tests where they like remove the gluten, shove it in a capsule and give it to the person, and then the person's fine. So they say, see, you're not gluten intolerant. I just gave you a bucket of gluten and nothing happened. But then they eat these gluten containing foods and their lips turn purple and they grow an extra arm, So we know that these foods can be problematic for some people, but that's why I feel like using an enzyme that's specific to gluten might not correct the problems, because it might be a lot of other cofactors in those foods beyond just the gluten. Okay, also, enzymes are not enough to fix digestion either. They are very important. They are a part of digestion. But if you're not creating enough stomach acid and your bile is not flowing correctly, enzymes are not enough to fix it.
All right, so that basically sums up all of the supplements she's taking. Do you want to move on to the questions?
Why don't we take about 2 or 3 of these questions, and then we're going to have to break up to the next episode because we're going too long already.
Okay, so the next question, you said you talk about bloating and constipation. Are there other digestive symptoms you experience? And she let you know that she occasionally has a stomach gurgling noises at times, and she does get gas, but not often.
And let's do this with the next question too.
And then you asked her, how often do you skip days with no bowel movements? How many days a week do you go? And she let you know that her bowel movements are not consistent. Sometimes she can go a few times per day, or some days not even at all. She said she thinks she probably has a total of 4 to 5 bowel movement days per week.
And that's horrible. I don't want you to do that anymore. Let's do one more question, then we'll lump all this together.
Okay, and the next one, how long after you eat do you start to feel bloated? And she said right after her meal, she feels bloated. The bloating feeling lingers all the time.
So first of all, these are questions that I sent her after she filled out the questionnaire that we have people fill out when they do these case studies. So if you do a case study with us, I send you all these questions to give me ideas of what might be going on. And then I follow up with more specific questions, depending on what answers you give me. So with all these things, you can see that, she's constipated, and we saw before that she was anabolic. So we might think, well, maybe it's just the anabolic imbalance causing her constipation and there's not enough water going to the bowels. But then we start to see that she's having a lot of bloating issues too, right when she eats. And if you're bloating right when you eat, that usually means you're bloating in your stomach. And that happens when there's not enough acid to break down the food. And another issue is when you don't have the right stomach acid, bacteria is going to get in your stomach. It's part of life. It's on things that we eat. Even if we kill it and cook it for hours, it's still, bacteria it just gets into us. And that stomach acid is our barrier to all these invaders that come in on our food, and it fries them up and kills them. But if there's not enough stomach acid there, then the bacteria comes in and says, oh, let's look at this campground. Let's make camp here, and we'll have keg parties, and we'll send our kids to college, and they thrive and multiply. And the waste from a lot of these bacteria is very alkaline. So their poop actually makes the stomach a better environment for them to live in by reducing stomach acid further. So now all of this waste and gases that these bacteria are putting out are creating gases in the stomach that create more pressure and expand and make us feel bloated. And then we eat this food and the body's like, hey, I need a little bit of stomach acid in here. So maybe it can make a little bit of stomach acid, and then the acid mixes with this alkaline waste from the bacteria and creates this big fizzy mess that creates even more gases and expanding, and we bloat even further. And then since we're not breaking the food down, it breaks down by rotting and fermenting, which creates more gases, and we bloat even further. So you can see how that would be bad.
Yes.
Yes. And so now this tells us that maybe the anabolic imbalance is contributing to her constipation, since she's having days where she doesn't poop at all. But it's very likely a case of a lack of stomach acid. And then that means that all that food that she eats remains alkaline. It doesn't get acidified. And then it moves through the intestinal tract in an alkaline state, which means it will move a lot slower. Our stool kind of moves at a pace according to its acidity level. So when it's alkaline like that, it will move very slowly, and then we get really constipated. And the doctor's like, don't worry about it. A lot of people don't poop every day.
And then they tell you to take more probiotics and fiber.
Right. Okay, so let's stop here, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this in next week's episode, and we're going to continue looking at, how this low stomach acid is not only, not allowing her to get the nutrients that her body needs to rebuild tissues correctly, but we're going to talk about fixing these issues and how they might relate to infertility issues, because that's a really big one. Okay, so if you want to download the imbalance guide, just go to chatthefat.com/episode 47, and we'll also have links in there for anything that we talked about in the show.
All right.
Okay, see you guys next week.
Whether you're brand new to keto or just looking to move past roadblocks, join us for our next Troubleshooting Keto Master Workshop. Go to chatthefat.com/workshop to find upcoming dates and register for this totally free event. You just might find your missing piece of the puzzle. Until then, we'll see you next week on Chat the Fat.